you want to always be able to answer the questions in your life. What can I afford? How much is enough? And what is now possible? Now, these are big questions, but as people rise out of the money fog, they come to the place in their life where they'll be like, okay, I do now know what I can afford. I do know how much is now enough. I do know what's possible in my life now that I'm clear about money.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 227 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast, where today I get to bring back someone who's been with us before. Today's guest is Mikelann Valterra. She is so cool. You guys, you can grab episode 164 as well, which we will link in the show notes or underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube. And oh my gosh, do I just love Mikelann. And I love her because it is her mission to help all of us heal our relationship with money and really understand how to use it in today's world. What I hope you listen for today as we talk about her brand new book, which is called Rise Above the Money Fog. So you listen for how specific her questions are when we come to dealing with transitions, when we look at what kind of family we were raised in. And when we start to, for each one of us, look at how we want to talk about money with our own children, with our own families, with our loved ones moving forward. Mikelann Valterra is an author, speaker, and master money coach who helps women around the world rise above the money fog, transform their relationship with money, and design their ideal life. For 25 years, Mikelann Valterra has been a thought leader in the industry of financial psychology. She's written, spoken, and been interviewed extensively on powerful, practical ways to reduce money anxiety. And she teaches effective methods for earning, saving, reducing debt, and managing money. Her new book, Rise Above the Money Fog, is now available online. You're going to love listening into this episode. I think it's going to be one of those that flies. You're going to take in the information, and it's probably one you're going to want to come back and listen to again. So pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Oh my gosh, Mikelann, welcome back to the
Thank
Game
you.
On
Thank you. Hello from
Girl.
Seattle.
I love it. I love it. It's such an exciting opportunity
Uh,
when we get to bring someone back. This is so great. This is so great. And it's such a good reason to bring you back, too.
I know. I'm super excited.
So hang on to your hats and glasses, girlfriends, because there seems to be a book just over your shoulder that I think we need to talk about. Can you tell us about this?
Oh, this small thing behind
Oh,
me. Oh, that small thing.
you're like, it
Yes,
almost killed me. This thing. Yes,
since last we spoke, I birthed a book. I think I was pregnant last time we talked, but
probably.
yeah,
Probably.
so it finally was published. It's called Rise Above the Money Fog: The Key
Mm.
to Confidence, Clarity, and Control Over Your Life. And I am so happy.
As you should be. I mean, what
Mm,
first of all, congratulations, because
thank you.
what a huge accomplishment. I mean,
Yeah.
I say this often, but I'm gonna say it again. Everybody could write a book, but not everybody should write a book. And the reason is it almost kills you. No, it's like
Yeah,
it
right.
is no joke, right? Like, oh my goodness. So tell
It
us about the
seems like such a
title.
good
I
idea.
know it. Yes, I will do this. Oh, wait, whose idea was this? Yeah. I did want to jump in right on that title, Michael. And I think it's so cool. Like, talk about the words money fog.
Money fog.
Why is that the
So,
title?
so someone asked me a couple years ago some version of, "Hey, Michael, what's your superpower?" And I didn't even have to think. I said, "Oh, well,
Mm,
my superpower is helping women rise above the money fog, get out of the money fog." And they were like, "Oh, you should write a book on that." And you know what's funny is at the time, I was totally hot on writing the next book. And it was going to be on, I even knew what I was going to call said book, of love, money, and tango, because I was super into, I'm a tango dancer, I'm getting married, I'm marrying my tango dance partner, blah, blah, blah. Who doesn't want that book? But, and maybe it's the next book, but as soon as I said it out loud, like, no, that's my superpower, rising above the money
mm,
fog,
mm.
it just became this lightning rod because so many people call me and describe being in a fog, right? I mean, they'll say it in different ways, but you want me to tell you what it is?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
What is
what,
it?
I think I know what it I mean, it's very
What is it?
descriptive, but, like, when
Yeah.
someone calls you and says, "Hey, this, and this," you're
I
like,
feel
"Fog."
foggy. I feel fuzzy. Yeah. So it's when people feel stress and anxiety over being financially vague. And it's financial
Mm,
vagueness that induces feelings of anxiety. So what I like about it is that, a lot of money talks just, when you hear people talking about money, it's this practical neutral tool. But the truth is money is so emotional, Sarah. I mean,
yeah.
it's one of the most emotional topics there is. And so the money fog is this combination of the feelings we feel as a result of not being clear about our money. And fog, fog stands for something. This is the fun thing about the book, FOG. So fog stands for when we're in fear about our money, when we're in overwhelm,
Mm,
or when we feel guilty around our money. A lot of times it's when we feel guilty about our spending. And
yes.
they're signposts. They're like, if you feel guilty about your spending, it may be a sign that you're in a money fog. If you feel overwhelmed, it might be a sign you're in a money fog, right? If you feel fear, stress, anxiety when you think about your
Mm,
money, I submit unto you, that is a classic sign that you might be in a money fog. And
mm.
so that's where it came from. It's these feelings we feel as a result of not being clear about our money. And it just has so many impacts in our life that people are not aware of. It's this like silent little fuzzy monster that's doing stuff that nobody's talking about.
Well, yeah, because the guilt is so real, right? People feel so much shame about even talking about money and how they feel about it. And then that compounds the problem, right? Because they don't
Yeah.
talk about what's going haywire. So it goes more haywire. And then they feel more guilty. I mean, I'm sure that's a cycle you must see all the time with your
Oh,
clients.
it's
Yeah.
a total cycle, right,
Yeah.
and like you said, because nobody talks about it, it makes it worse. We all think we're the only ones,
Right.
right? We
Right.
all think that, we're the only ones that, fill in the blank, are carrying credit card debt, or we're the
Right.
only ones that haven't started saving for retirement, or we're the only ones that either can't afford to go to Paris or we went and put it on the credit card, right? I mean, there's just
Right.
all of this secrecy
Mm,
around money that we all carry because we have this message from childhood that says, don't talk about money.
yeah.
And no wonder we're in a fog as adults because there's no early talk or training or clarity on it at all for the vast majority of us.
Michael, tell me, you just sparked something for me because I talk a lot about unspoken family rules. But I
Yes.
feel like money is actually spoken about not to be spoken about. When 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 you dive into childhood with people,
Yeah.
what are some of the common sentences, phrases, attitudes that you hear repeated pretty consistently? And I'm asking this because I know the girlfriends who are going to be attracted to listening to this episode will probably recognize themselves in some of them, and it'll be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. So when I wrote the book, I wrote about kind of three different types of families, if you will, and
Okay.
we can all find ourselves in one of these families. The average family I call the periodically tense family,
Okay.
where it's like, we grow up and we're not super communicative in general. It's a perfectly fine, loving family, but things happen. And in most families, there are tense, difficult things that happen. There's a divorce, or there's illness, or there's all sorts of things. No one has a perfect family. In those families, and that was my family, by the way, the message was don't talk about money. It's rude to talk about money.
Mm,
Don't
mm.
ask dad what he makes. Like I had a client the other day saying she remembered sitting at the dinner table, and this is so many people's stories, and at some point said in the middle of dinner, "Hey, daddy, how much do you make?" Typical question that
Sure.
most kids have, right? And she remembers very clearly there was this brittle silence, as
Mm.
she remembers it, and her mother intervening on her father's behalf and saying, "Debbie, we do not talk about money, and that is not polite to ask somebody."
Interesting. Interesting.
And done. Never brought up again.
Mhm.
Never brought up again. Fast forward 20, 30 years. Her parents don't know what she makes. She certainly never went back and talked to them about it,
Oh,
you know,
that's fascinating. I didn't even think
right?
about that end of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right? It's
Mhm.
really interesting because
Yeah.
you don't do that. So, so that's super normal, but normal isn't maybe not the best
Common.
word, but it's common. Yeah,
Common. Yeah.
exactly. There are some people that grow up in what I call unfortunately the high conflict family. And the high conflict family tend to be people that grew up in, let's just say it, unhappy
Mhm.
families where there's conflict. It wasn't necessarily all about money, but, we all have friends that grew up in families where you felt like you were walking on eggshells
Yeah.
and you likely heard your parents fight about money. So money was out there, but you grow up with this feeling of, okay, money makes mom cry. Money hurts
Oh,
adult
wow.
relationships. Money is
Mm.
somehow, and the thing is, Sarah, as little kids, we know money's important
Mhm.
because that thing called money, we know it's buying food,
Sure.
right? It's buying
Yeah.
our toys. It's doing this thing somehow connected to the word called a bill, so we know that adults have this thing going on, right? And it's
Mhm.
super important and we pick up like sponges how important the substance is. And yet it's secretive.
Mhm.
It's either not talked about in kind of average family or it's fought about
Yes.
in those families that are less happy, right?
Mhm.
But there is a third type of family that I think in some ways I'm always fascinated with. I call it the supposedly ideal family.
Okay. Ooh, I
Ooh,
like the word
yes.
okay, supposedly is in there. All right.
Supposedly
Hit
ideal
me.
family, right?
Hit me.
Where because I've had so many clients describe over the years, Mikelann, I had a great family, right? Like loving parents, they were totally fine. We had enough money. I hear all these sad stories, but that's not me. My parents did not fight about money, right? But the core was still the same in that money wasn't talked about. The
Ah.
thing is, it was, but it was all handled behind closed doors,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? It was all handled behind closed doors. And so the problem is this, we grow up, our parents provided us this lovely lifestyle.
Right.
We have no idea how they did it.
Mhm.
We naturally assume as adults we will have the same lifestyle that we grew up with no clue
Right.
as to how it happened, right? And so
Yeah.
people that grow up in the supposedly ideal family as adults often describe themselves as being bored when it comes to money talk,
Oh,
being
interesting.
and
Okay.
it's really interesting,
Uh-huh.
uninterested and disconnected around money. And then they
Mm.
say, I don't understand why I'm avoidant around money and why I can't just get interested in this topic. I know it's supposedly important, but yeah, I just can't get there, but I'm stressed.
Mm. Okay. So these are the 3 types. You know what I'm hearing in every single one? We're not talking about this.
Every single one. We're not
Every
talking about
single
it.
one. So how can we course correct that for the children coming up behind us as we were all probably raised in one of those 3?
We were, and you hit on it when you said, but I realized I haven't been talking with her about money a
Yeah.
lot in general. And so part of it as our job as parents is to normalize talking about money
Mm.
because you don't want what happens is a lot of parents, the first time they talk about money is college
Yeah.
funding. Well, you don't want that to be the first time you talk about money for such a big charged subject, right? So part of it is what's age appropriate. We all
Sure.
know our kids at different levels. I always recommend that we start off when kids are little, helping them look at what do they need versus what do they want and discerning needs and wants. Because some of this goes into a really early developmental topic called delayed gratification.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and here's what's
Yeah.
interesting, Sarah. Delayed gratification is actually a learned skill. People don't realize it. And so part of our role as parents is to help kids learn delayed gratification. And it's perfect around money and gifts and Christmas. Those are those earlier conversations around money, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Let's make a list of all the things that you want for Christmas, right? Let's make a list of all the things that you think you need for the upcoming school year. So some of that beginning list making with kids is the
That's great.
actual beginning of talking about money, even though we're not necessarily putting dollars and cents. Kids need to know that you hear what they need and what they want.
Mm,
Otherwise, it
mm,
builds and builds and builds and turns into money issues later on. And it's
got
interesting
it.
because it's not, you don't think it's about money. So just kind of like case in point, I trained my son really early. You know how Toys R Us, a lot of your listeners, we used to go to Toys R Us. It's
Totally, it's the
folded now,
best.
but it was
Yeah.
like Christmas Mecca.
Oh my god, the
Oh
best.
my
Yeah.
god, it was the best, right? So I would take my son into Toys R Us with the goal of building his list. And he
Mm,
was so excited to build, and he would come to me and he'd go, Mom, put this on my list. And then we'd go home and we'd look at his list and then he'd order it and go, okay, I guess I don't really need that particular Lego set. But he would see, I remember one time when he saw a kid not that different having a tantrum in an aisle because this kid wanted, whatever it was, his heart of hearts wasn't getting it. And Xander said to me, Mom, why don't they just help him put stuff on his list? Then I don't think he would cry. Right. And so it's
oh,
that beginning of it when,
yes.
and so for years when Xander would see something he really wanted, he would come to me and go, Mom, because you never say mom once. It's
Never.
always mom.
It's always repeated.
Get
Yes.
my list out. Get my list out. Okay, get your list out. Put this on your list, so that we would have it to think about later. So that's the beginning of money conversations in a lovely way that's not all about, the dollars and cents per se.
Right.
And then over time, you are bringing your kids into family meetings where we're talking about, okay, here's what the family is doing this year. And, some things cost a lot of money, and that's okay. And let's look at where we want to choose to put our money as a family.
Mhm.
And that's
Love
the
it.
next level,
Ah,
right?
so
You know,
good.
and
So
then from
good.
there, it goes into all sorts of different things. And so by the time you have this conversation, I'm like, yeah, sweetie, you're right. I did notice 110. I think maybe there's this thing called inflation going on. And it could be an
Yeah.
interesting, it
Yeah.
could be an interesting teaching moment.
Right. Love that. So, okay, so it's really I love the idea of list building, but because how many people don't even do that now?
Well, that's
Right?
why I bring it up. I
Yeah.
have all my clients create needs and wants lists. It's a
Love.
core piece of a healthy relationship to money. Core.
Ah, and you know what I love about it is it's not charged, because it doesn't have
Right.
dollars and
Right.
cents next to it yet. That
Exactly.
is
Exactly.
genius. So,
Yeah,
so
you get to put everything you want on your desire list. If you don't have stuff on your desire list that doesn't feel a little bit crazy, you're not trying hard enough, right? Because
right.
many of us are suppressed in our needs and wants and our desires. We have been trained to keep our needs small, and this has an impact on our relationship to money as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think because it's part of that, like, oh, I think kind of that guilt starts to settle in of like either I'm selfish for wanting it, right? Or I should feel
Right.
guilty for wanting it, as opposed to like, hey, how could we make this happen?
Right, exactly.
Right.
People either go into this like self-denial mode
Yes.
or they're guilty for spending mode. But either way, they don't feel good about it. And so we want, you want to feel
Mm.
above board with yourself, right? And feel good about like what's my plan for my money? I want to spend my money the way I want to spend it, right? But it's almost like sometimes we're spending our own money in secret from ourselves.
I think that's right. It's kind of like, and you know what I always hear when we talk about money, Michael, and I obviously I work with a lot of different people on how to stay healthy and how to have great relationship with money and how to take care of their businesses. The two topics that I think are so similar are money and food.
Yeah,
It's like
they
if
are.
you eat well while you're walking around, didn't count, right? It's almost like if I spend this and I don't notice, it doesn't count. It's the
Yeah,
same, like we kind of pull
it is.
ourselves away from the things that we either really want but feel bad that that we're getting them, whether we're eating them or spending on them, right? Like there's this really interesting phenomenon in human behavior where it's like if we ignore it, it didn't
You hit on the most interesting thing. I know, I'm
Yeah.
totally with you. In fact, I tell new clients, food and money are the 2 most intertwined issues there are. They are
Oh,
it. You are on it, Sarah. And, part of it is they're the 2 most common mechanisms we use to either deprive ourselves or treat ourselves,
right.
right?
Yes.
But there's a lot in there. Whenever we're worried about being deprived around food, for example, we will spend so they did an interest years ago. I'll just throw this in because it's so darn interesting. What you find is when people do like a Weight Watchers program or a real traditional program where kind of counting calories and a lot of
Keeping
great
track.
programs like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're keeping track. What you find is people's spending goes out of control.
No way. Oh, I just
Yeah,
got
and
chills. Oh my
right, and it's
gosh.
real and when you look at that, you go, "Wait a minute, what on earth is going on? Why are these even connected?" But it's because we are so afraid of being deprived
Mm,
around food, and it's not fully conscious. We're just adults and all trying to, "Oh, we should do this. It's willpower. Just do it like Nike." So we're buckling down to get through this, like, "I can do it. I can do it." Lose the weight, and it comes out somewhere else where we're leaving every Weight Watchers meeting and stopping by the mall makeup counter on our way home to make ourselves feel better, right? And again, not fully conscious,
makes sense.
but we have to be
Mhm.
able to take care of ourselves at a really, really deep level, or it comes out in our relationship to food and money.
Oh my God. Look at that. Yeah, I
It's
always knew
so
they were
interesting.
connected, but I didn't know there were
Super
actual
connected.
studies.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're the
you just made
2
my day.
most commonly connected issues. Well, I think the other reason is, like, when you've got an issue like alcohol or cocaine or whatever the addiction is, there's this hardcore bottom line. I'm not saying it's easy,
Mhm.
but the bottom line is simple: do not drink. Do
Right.
not
You
do any
can't.
more cocaine. I will
Right.
stop smoking marijuana, right? It's like
Right.
it's a black and white line that people are trying to hit, and it's got a lot of complexities within that. But the problem with food and money and why they are in their own special world is you can't say to someone, just don't eat.
That's right.
Just don't spend money, right?
Right.
So you're for these 2 issues, you're trying to find this healthy relationship to food, this
Yeah.
healthy relationship to money. And so it's really emotional and psychological because we push and portray a lot of issues. We project a lot of issues onto food. We project even more issues onto money. We play out a lot of stuff in our relationship to money psychologically because it touches every area of our life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Both do.
Both
You
do.
can't not eat and
Yeah.
you can't not deal with money,
Yeah,
right?
and they're
Like, yeah,
everywhere. Yeah,
brilliant.
food and money
Yeah,
touch your personal life, they touch
sure.
your business life, they touch your relationship with your children.
Mm,
How are you
mm.
not gonna play out issues on these they're so convenient. They're like these perfect morphogenic fields where you project your stuff onto, right?
Well, and they're
And it's
both
not
incredibly
conscious.
powerful.
Very
Very
powerful.
powerful, right? One you die without, and the other can change your life one way or the other. We're talking about it and how do we make it function, but it's not necessarily like this lighthearted little topic. Da da da
No.
da. You know
Well,
what I mean?
they're
It's
both
not like
connected
that.
to
Yeah.
survival, right?
Yeah.
Anything
Basic.
connected to survival pushes on deep, deep emotional mechanisms. We have deep feelings about survival, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
it is it's
yeah.
it's fundamental safety, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
this
our
is so
feelings of
good.
them go back to childhood because of this.
And whether or not we felt safe around these
Right.
things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I love that we're distilling this down like this.
It's
So
deep.
it is deep. And we're dealing with something now, right? Like we mentioned inflation, talking about healthcare. And you guys don't
Mhm.
know this, but before we decided to hit record, we were chatting and just talking about a transition that's currently happening in the economy that we haven't necessarily chosen. We don't like transitions we haven't chosen. Thank you so much. We like to pretend we're in control. And that is that the cost of living has really gone up. Now, as this happens to human beings, I could bet there is a massive money fog slapping people upside the head right now. And you have three really important questions we can ask when we're in a transition like this. Can you share those with us?
Yeah, I call these the 3 core questions. So, you wanna be always be able to answer the questions in your life, "What can I afford? How much is enough?
Mm,
And what is now possible?" Now, these are big questions, but as people rise out of the money fog, they come to the place in their life where they be like, okay, I do now know what I can afford. I do know how much is now enough. I do know what's possible in my life now that I'm clear about money. The problem is we often answer these questions because, we're adults, we're doing the best that we can, we're living our life, right? We get used to wherever we are, and we're generally functioning, depending on, we may want to be happier, but we're generally functioning here. But then transition happens.
Mm,
And in transition, the answers to those three questions tend to have changed and they catch us by surprise. So, what we can afford, that answer may have changed once you've gone through a transition of divorce
mm,
or
mhm.
retirement or a big job change, or you've moved from North Dakota to New York City.
That's a
And
big
guess
change.
what?
Yeah.
It's a little bit more expensive. So the question, what can I afford, needs to be re-answered whenever you go through a big transition. How much money is enough? How much money you need to earn? We've got to re-answer that question whenever you go through a big transition. Like, you might go through a big transition of, retiring, or so many different transitions where like, I had a client the other day, both her children just finished college.
Okay.
So she's done paying
Oh
huge
god, those huge
bills.
tuition bills,
Yeah,
right.
she's been cash flowing tuition bills. She did an amazing job,
That's
right?
incredible.
She
Yeah.
made worked really hard and did it, right? But now that her second child is off the family payroll, as she says, she doesn't need to make as much money. She's not going to take as
Oh,
many
that's
contracts
interesting.
this year. She's going to work less because the answer has changed to, how much is enough. And
Oh, that's interesting.
what you and I were talking about is some transitions are not voluntary,
Right.
and so we don't want to look at these answers. Thank you very much. Like
Mhm.
divorce. And you're talking about the economy. When the
Mhm.
economy changes, or just go back a few years, the small thing called the pandemic,
Yeah, I heard
right?
about that. Yeah.
I've heard about it too. And so it was a huge thing that hit us all upside the head with not much notice. Huge transition that affected everybody in different ways. And so the answers to all those questions changed for many people depending on their situation and their work and their living expenses. If we go through a period of inflation, another transition, right? Chances are the answers have changed again. And
Yeah.
because we're not picking it, we're not choosing to retire or choosing to send our children to college or whatever, we tend to not like to re-answer those questions when the change is not of our choosing,
Right.
but we
And
still have to answer them.
right, that's the issue, right? Is I think, when something like this happens, I'm so happy we're having this conversation now because I'm hearing the impact of these changes. But to have a tool like this, like these 3 questions to go
Yeah.
through and ask while this is happening, I just think it's so helpful. And again, us even talking about it right now,
Yeah.
right, is allowing other people to say, oh, wait, I can talk about this now. And I can ask myself these questions, but also maybe, I don't know, share it with your friends while you're out for drinks. Hey, guys, when's the last time you asked these questions? Like, it's so important for us to empower each other to talk
Mhm.
about this most powerful tool we have access to.
Yeah, and when I think about, I give people these little quizzes on my websites. How do you know if you're in a money fog, right? And
Oh,
one of them is, does money feel like a sacred tool for you to live your best life?
mm,
And we
a
want that
sacred
answer to
tool.
be
Mm,
yes.
mm,
Does it feel like a sacred tool to live your best life? And if you say yes with ease, I bet you're not in a money fog. But if we're like, I actually feel triggered when I hear that question, and I'm like, I'm not feeling like it's a sacred tool to live my best life. Like, what the heck is that? Right. Then chances are, my guess is you're in some level of money fog and it's impacting you. And it
mm,
and it impacts people in different ways. When people aren't clear about their money, it does lead some people to overspend, but it leads some people to underspend, right? They batten the hatches because they're not sure and there's a lot of fear, so just don't spend. Some people over earn, Sarah. Like, they will literally get locked in the golden handcuffs because they're not sure how
mhm.
much is enough, that question,
Right,
right? So
right.
just work and work and work and work and work until you've shot your adrenal glands. Other people under earn because they don't know how much is enough. And
Interest
so
interesting.
they don't know what the goal is around earning, and they're underselling themselves. They know something's not quite working, but there's no clarity there. And
Mhm.
that's why the fog creates so much darn anxiety.
Yeah. Well, not knowing always creates anxiety, right? Like, even if you don't know what's going to happen when you arrive somewhere for dinner, you're like, I don't know what's happening. Do I bring a coat? Are we eating inside? Are we eating outside? Like, that can cause anxiety. But when
Yeah,
it's about something this important, right? And I
it's a
get the
big one.
double, like I want to say the double scoop of ice cream here, right? The compounding efforts. We're not supposed to talk about it.
Right.
So then you don't know to get clear about it. Then you're not clear on it. Then you get scared. And then it just keeps adding on. I'm
It does.
really understanding how this is happening. This is really great.
Well, and the thing I think part of why I called it the money fog is, obviously the metaphor is the fog, but it's very much like driving a car in a dense fog because when you're driving a car in a dense fog, you're taking all your energy to stay on the road and there is no forward vision. You're not thinking about, "Oh, where are we going? Oh, let's plan the trip down the road." It takes all your energy to just stay on the road, not run off the road, not hit something. Your vision becomes super truncated, right?
Yeah.
And when people are in a money fog, it's the same thing. We take all our energy to avoid making some weird money mistake or
Yeah.
some bill snafu or all our energies are transferring money around between accounts and trying to pay the credit cards and all that jazz. But it's no forward vision. Like, what
Mhm.
do I want to do with my life? What might be possible? And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of getting out of the money fog. But most of us aren't aware of how much fog we're in until we're out of it. And then we're like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, it was deeper than I realized. We just kind of feel these effects that might be indicators that you're in a fog, but we don't tend to walk around saying this. We just
Right.
walk around stressed.
Right. And not really even knowing why, other than I must be stupid or amoral or shameful or like
Yeah, or
all
what's
of
wrong
the
with me? I don't know
yeah.
how to do money. Everyone else knows how to do money. I mean, I
Yeah.
hear that a lot.
I love that. I do too. I actually hear that
Yeah.
too. How come everybody else knows how to do this? I'm like, nobody knows how to do this. You have to
Yeah,
ask and you
exactly.
have to be taught. Yeah. So I have one question as we're wrapping up that's rolling around in the back of my head. And I talk about personally the three myths that keep us broke. And one of the myths is that more is better. And so as someone is asking this question, how much is enough?
Mhm.
Have you run into people or clients who cannot figure out when it's enough? Like, how do we find that number? Because I think it's so ingrained in us to think 100 bazillion dollars, right? Like,
Right, yeah.
when
This
is it
cosmic
actually enough?
number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how
Mhm.
do you coach people to figure that out? How
Mhm.
do we know when we're in that spot that's actually appropriate
Mhm.
for enough
Right.
without being bananas?
Oh my, this is such a great question. In many ways, it's the cornerstone of money coaching. It's my favorite thing of all because the answer lies in creating a life-giving annual income and spending plan. I mean, this is like the perfect question. I could have
Life
given you
giving.
this question. Oh
Oh,
yeah, but I spend a lot of time with clients at the beginning of the year putting together what is the plan for the year. And
mm,
what's exciting is it's about vision. What do you want your year to look like? And now let's put numbers in it.
yeah.
Let's literally look at how much money you are going to spend the whole year, including on the things that you want and need. It goes back to needs and wants all the time, right? And we actually, believe it or not, come up with a number, right?
Mm,
It is
mm,
possible to put together an annual spending plan that says, okay, and for most people, it's the first time they've ever seen how much money that they actually need that they consider is enough for the year. And I've seen it go a lot of ways, but a lot of times that number is different and lower than this cosmic number in their head. Because a lot of people are walking around with numbers, right? Like, okay, I think I need 200,000 a year.
mhm.
They're not totally sure where they get their
Why?
number.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Right.
kind of who knows, sort of in the environment, a dream of this or that, initially looking at the number, they're so afraid that it will be more than they earn, more than they
Mm,
have. What does that mean? But you want to get in touch with that number now so that we can go, okay, what does that mean? Are we looking at shifts in the career or does it mean that, oh, wow, you can actually save more than you thought? Or there's so many things to chew on once we have that number and what it really means in your
mm,
life. But there's a lot of fear around getting into that number. And that's partly why I think it is, I mean, obviously I'm a money coach and I've been doing this for 25 years, right? But it's why it's so helpful to do with another person because
Yeah.
it brings up so much excitement. Like, wow, you mean I can talk about an annual plan where there's enough money for I can start riding horses, whatever their
Yeah,
secret
whatever
dreams
it is.
are
Yeah.
that they're afraid they can't find the money for. What
Mhm.
if we did a plan that had you riding horses in it? What if we did
Ah,
a plan where you were doing these wonderful hobbies or you could spend all your money on Argentine tango dance lessons, right? I mean, that's what
who's
I do
that?
with all
Oh, yeah.
mine. Yeah.
Who could that possibly be?
Who
No,
could
that
that
is
possibly
so
be?
great. Okay, so it's
But
kind
it's just so powerful. It's
yeah.
empowering.
Yeah, and it's here what I'm hearing you say is it's like and I have to do this all the time in business, right? I'm like, "Why do you wanna hire me as your business coach?" They're like, "I wanna make 6 figures." I'm like, "Why?" Like, what like,
Right.
all
Exactly. What
the
does that
time.
mean? Six
Yeah.
figures.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
it's just so often. It happens so often that we get these esoteric numbers in our head, but we don't bring
Yep.
them down into reality. I was just actually doing a year-end planning session. Someone was like, "I have this big goal." And I was like, "Okay, well, if we save this much money a month or we're doing this with it, is that gonna get you to that goal?" She's like, "No, not even close." I'm like, "Okay, so we need to adjust the goal, right, to
Right.
actually fit what's happening." It's like, "Oh, yeah." And these
Yeah.
are brilliant human beings. These are, like, some of the most extraordinary people I know.
Right.
And I think, thank God you're doing this work because what it comes down to is we were told not to talk about it for a long
We were told not to
time. So
talk
we don't
about
have to
it,
talk about it.
and I would also add that your clients that are working with you, that's self-care, right?
Yes.
They deserve to have you with them, in the boat with them, helping them look at everything, why do we have to be alone? Why do we have to figure this all out
Seriously.
alone?
I don't know, Mikelann, I think this is why coaches I mean, I love our job so much. I think we're so lucky, but I also believe that just life changes
Yeah,
through conversation, right? So you can have one
absolutely.
conversation with a coach that changes everything. And I believe, your clients, it's the same thing. We all need each other so much. And what a great resource to be able to bring into your life with that, like you said, life-giving money. So good.
I love
Michael,
it.
and if somebody's listening and they're like, "Oh dear God, get me this book right now," where should we go to find that?
Right now. So it's called Rise Above the Money Fog. You can go, I would probably send people to my website, seattlemoneycoach.com. You can totally buy the book on Amazon. You can go to Rise Above the Money Fog, which is if you want to hear me talk about the book, look at videos about the book, what other people, the book is only 100 pages. And
Mm,
I did it on purpose, which is so bloody hard to write such a targeted short book. It's like reminds me of Mark Twain, that famous quote when he says to his friend, "I didn't have time to write
make
you
it
a
shorter.
short letter, so I wrote you a long letter instead."
Yes.
Because it's so focused. It's about the story of three women as they rise above the money fog.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, so they can grab it, follow the links on my website, and big surprise, I would love it if people wanted to talk with me. They can grab a free discovery call with me, and we'll talk about big surprise. What's keeping you in the money fog? What's one thing we can do so that you can rise above it? And they can grab that discovery call on the site Seattle Money Coach. My clients are all over the United States, Sarah, but I happen to be in the Northwest.
I love it. I love it. Oh, Michael, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to us about this book, to talk about what created it for you and what's happening for so many of us right now when it comes to money. It's just so important we keep this conversation going. Thank you.
I love it. I love your podcast. I'm so happy. And I know your listeners adore you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for having me.
You bet.